All right. Okay, we're going to get underway. For those of you don't know Pastor John or haven't met Pastor John Wandera has actually been here before, back in 2016. And I got to know John in 2013. And I would have to say it was actually by accident, but it was God planned. Does that make sense? What I say by accident is that I went to Melbourne for a church conference, and I had no idea that this man was going to be there. He would at that time had been. It was a God-appointed time. We were there for an apostolic conference, actually, and he was one of the guest speakers, I suppose. Were you just visiting there for the day? I can't remember, but for Sunday service, and he was there on behalf of a mission organisation called WorldShare. WorldShare are a worldwide mission organisation, and they do have an office in Sydney. And the reason I mention WorldShare is because Pastor John will touch a little bit on about WorldShare and how they actually affect the ministry that he's involved in. We titled this evening session, if you would call it that, we titled it The Mission of Faith, because this man's life is a mission of faith. And he's got some incredibly powerful stories to tell, stories which actually are life account. And the reason I've asked him to share is really because we are so far removed in our country, our culture, from the way probably 95% of the world live. For any of you who have accompanied me or to Uganda, or you've been to a third world country yourself on other missions or whatever, you'd know that we are so blessed to live in our what we would call the lucky country. So without any further ado, I'd like you to put your hands together for Pastor John as he comes to share with us this evening. Thank you, brother.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
You use that mic.
Oh, good.
What I should say is I'll flick this off, but at any time during John's sharing, he's giving permission. If something he shares sparks a burning question, then please put your hand up or say, hey, I got a question, because otherwise we'll go past you, and then I'll bring the microphone to you, because we're actually recording this session too, and for the benefit of others who want to watch it after. And your question is very important, so you get to ask that question, and hopefully John can answer it. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that's better. Is that better? Good. Yeah, I'm glad that I'm standing in the middle of the lights, so that you can see my face clearly. If not, unless I laugh, that's when you'll see my teeth, Yeah. So, well, I want to say thank you very much, everybody who you came. You've left your homes and houses. It's a little bit windy. You'll be home warming up and maybe having a dessert after your dinner. But you say, no, I just must go and meet up with this young African fella and just get to hear stories. Today I'm not preaching, that's why I don't have a Bible with me. So it's a casual meeting, and as Pastor Paul said, it's something about faith, a mission of faith or a walk of faith. And I will be sharing a little bit about my country, Uganda, because some of us don't know. Okay, you hear about Uganda, but you might not be knowing exactly how and where Uganda has come from, and where about Uganda is, and why are things happening the way they are happening in Uganda. And why particularly Uganda, not Kenya, not Tanzania, because what Uganda has suffered, Kenya or Tanzania hasn't suffered. I don't know why the enemy really keeps following after Uganda. But let me give you a little bit of a history about Uganda. Before 1800s, Uganda had tribes, and every tribe had a leader, and so there used to be tribal wars, tribal conflicts, until early 18th, and that's when now some of these tribes became kingdoms. So now in Uganda we had about over 10 different kingdoms, and every kingdom was autonomous, okay, and every kingdom had a king. Now it was through the kings, that is how slave trade was now being transferred from Uganda to Zanzibar. You see, it was Zanzibar is an island in the Indian Ocean. So the Indians, the Asians, and the Europeans could come to Zanzibar to buy slave trade. But now, later on, in the middle of 1800s, some of the Asians were interested to know, where do these wonderful, handsome men come from? And they told them that these handsome men come from Uganda. So they began their way from the border, from the ocean, into Uganda. And they went straight to a palace. And when they went to the palace, they said, hey, do you know what? We have come to simplify your job. We don't want you to transport the slaves to Zanzibar. We will buy them here in exchange with guns, with the other stuff that they didn't have. So that's how it happened. And these were Asians, still working with the kingdoms. Later, the first Englishman in around 1862, the first Englishman from England, whose name was John Speke, came sailing, and he also wanted to know where these slaves are coming from. So he was the first Englishman to step in Uganda. And when he stepped in Uganda, they say, because he was a little civilized, so he began claiming that I have discovered the Nile River. Yet the Nile River was existing. You see, it was existing, but John Speke said, no, I have discovered it. Then he again said, I have discovered Lake Victoria. And he changed the names from the original local names, and he gave them the English names. Lake Victoria, Nile River. Then later on, other missionaries, other explorers also came, and they went farther west, and they began naming lakes after the royal family. Yeah, Lake Edward, Lake Albert, So and these were explorers. So they changed the names and they gave their English names. Now that is when the king of central Uganda wrote a letter and gave it to John Speke, to take it to the Queen of England, requesting her to send missionaries to Uganda. So John Speke took this letter to the Queen, and later according to the history I remember, in 1877, the first missionaries, who were called CMS, Church Missionary Society, were sent from England, and those were Anglicans or We call them Anglicans, or call them Protestants, or call them Episcopals. So they were sent to Uganda to come and tell Ugandans about God. Later on, 2 years later, the Romans had heard that, the English or the England had sent, they have sent missionaries. So the Romans also sent their missionaries to begin Catholicism. You see, so they all began now fighting for people. You see, they all now began a fight. The English and the Romans are fighting for Ugandans. So that is how religion began in Uganda in those years. Later on, British and Germany, they signed a treaty. And this treaty was allowing Uganda to become a British protectorate. So England began protecting Uganda. Okay, so it became like its own territory. Now they are protecting it, and that took a long time until 1960s. 1960s, yeah, 1960s. It was a long period of time until when Ugandans had now gone to school, and they were now thinking harder, and they began now advocating for independence. So in 1962, Uganda was announced, it got its independence. 1962, and now the British or Britain or the English people had to go back, and they left Uganda to become a republic. So in 1963, Uganda became a republic. Yeah. You see, it became a republic, and now we had a president. Before then, we had a prime minister. Okay, before republic, we had a prime minister, and but after then, it became a republic, and now we began now having a constitution, a parliament from 1963. Now listen to this. The problems of Uganda began in 1966. Wow. That is when the problems of Uganda began. How? The problems of Uganda began when Obote took over power from the first president. He just began calling himself, "I am the president of Uganda." And now he kicked out Edward Mutesa, who was the first president, kicked him out. He ran out for asylum. So Obote became the president from 1966, actually, until Idi Amin. Idi Amin, some of you remember Idi Amin, right? Yeah, Idi Amin was in charge of military. He was very well military trained. So he was in charge of military during Obote's regime. Okay, now because his boss, Obote, had assumed the power in a wrong way, so Idi Amin was also looking for a spot how he can put off Obote and he becomes the president. So in 1971, when Obote had traveled for a presidential tour in Singapore, he left Idi Amin in power, controlling the whole country, and then Idi Amin announced and said, "Hey, guys, from today onwards, I, Idi Amin, I am now the president of Uganda." So Obote never came back until later. So when he returned from Singapore, he went to Tanzania and for political asylum, and then he pleaded with the president of Tanzania to team up with him to fight Idi Amin. That is Obote. So in so Idi Amin became president from 1971 to 79. And that was most of you, I know most of you, not these young ones, but most of you, you remember Idi Amin, and you remember Uganda because of Idi Amin. 71 to 79. That was a very terrible moment whereby people were killed. Those who had received religion or received Christ and they became Christian through the church missionary society. Idi Amin was a Muslim, so Idi Amin had to kill them. Some of them, he could load them in a truck and he takes them in the River Nile, you see, and he tips them alive. He could tip them alive in the Nile. See, so many Christians died during those days. So that's how you hear about Idi Amin, how dictator he was, a brutal man, and so forth and so forth. But Obote, through the help of the president of Tanzania, so they agreed to fight Idi Amin out of Uganda. So the war was not easy because Idi Amin was not an easy fighter. He was very well trained. And listen to this, and what I'm going to tell you will explain to you why HIV/AIDS was rampant in Uganda. Now, so Tanzania is to our south. So that is where the Tanzanian troops entered Uganda to fight Idi Amin out. And it was not easy. It took a couple of years for Idi Amin to be booted out of Uganda. And listen, when the Tanzanian troops or army entered Uganda, that is from 1979, when Idi Amin took off, then the Tanzanian soldiers entered Uganda. They were in Uganda for a couple of years. And because they had left their families back, they were the ones who introduced HIV/AIDS in Uganda. So HIV/AIDS started right from the south, where the Tanzanian soldiers came through, and now HIV began growing like a mushroom in Uganda. So that's how HIV/AIDS killed massive and lots of people in Uganda. So Uganda since then has had several issues, several atrocities, several killings, several rebel activities, several murders, several things happening in Uganda since 1966. Now, so after Obote coming in power, now since 1966 up to date, since 1963 up to date, Uganda has had 8 presidents. Okay, 8 presidents. Okay, so the one who is in power right now, his name is President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, has been in power for the last either 36 or 30-something years. Yeah, but for us as Christians, we are happy for him because God has used him to bring peace and stability in Uganda. Now, let me share with you now about many things that have caused or brought Uganda backwards. The problem of HIV/AIDS. Friends, we have lost so many important people since the early 80s, since 79, up to now, up to date. Lots of people have died. And that HIV/AIDS has been one of the contributors of Uganda having so many orphans. So the orphans you hear about in Uganda, not all of them, but some of them were as a result of HIV/AIDS. And this was because of the weaknesses of parents or husbands and wives who were so immoral, and that's how HIV was spread in Uganda. So orphans, the orphan children in Uganda were as a cause of HIV/AIDS. The second is internal tribal conflicts. Internal. You see, so this tribe fights the other tribe, and they end up killing one another, and they leave innocent children. You see, so internal conflict, tribal conflicts. Cause number 3 was now rebel activities. Rebel activities, some of you might have heard about a rebel group called the Lord's Resistance Army. I wonder if you heard about that. Yeah, the Lord's Resistance Army. And this guy was called, his name was called Joseph Kony. So Joseph Kony was based in the northern part of Uganda, and he did horrible stuff. Yeah, horrible stuff. And to some extent, if his men or his soldiers had mercy on you, they chop your nose, chop off your lips, and leave you. That is, you have found mercy before them. Yeah, and you remember the child soldier. That's right, the child soldier. If you can find the child soldier, that can tell you lots about the Lord's Resistance Army. So rebels were not only in the north. I want to tell you, rebels were almost in every corner of Uganda. From the east, from the west, from everywhere, we had rebels. And all of them were killing innocent parents, leaving children destitute and helpless. You see, I'll come back to that later. Killer number 4 is malaria. Malaria. Right now, there are no rebels in Uganda, but malaria is still prevailing. And yes, please. Now, I have to be careful to answer this. I should say yes and no. Yes, because people are still dying with HIV/AIDS. But the only problem is that they have introduced ARVs. ARVs, you know ARVs? ARVs, these are kind of tablets that slow down the virus. It slows down the virus. It builds a little bit of the immune so that the virus takes long to be active.
Pastor John, just for the sake of those watching video, can we just have Ellie ask that question again?
Sure. I just asked whether AIDS was still as prevalent now as it was in the 90s in Uganda.
Yeah, thank you very much. So as I have answered, it's yes and no. Yeah, yes, because people are still dying, okay, but because of what the government, the system also that the government put in place, the government introduced what is called ABC. ABC stands for abstinence, abstinence, B, I forget, but C is use of condoms. B is something I'll remember. So the government introduced ABC, and have had so many funding, international funding, to sensitize Ugandans about how to keep themselves safe. So that is how now, when you try to study, the statistics say that there is no AIDS in Uganda, yet people are still dying indirectly. And it cannot be publicized because, of several reasons. But I say yes and no. There are still people who are carriers of HIV/AIDS, and people are still dying indirectly. So,
hang on a sec. Sorry. Hang on. Ask the question.
Oh, okay. Are you saying that AIDS was deliberately introduced in Uganda as for weaponry sort of thing? Or,
AIDS?
Yes.
No, it was not introduced as a weaponry, but the soldiers, the Tanzania soldiers who were fighting against Idi Amin,
A lot of them were infected.
yeah, a lot of them were infected. So they are the ones who infected the Ugandan women. Is that clear? Yeah, that's how it happened. So malaria is at the moment right now, malaria is killer number one. And lots of people have died daily of malaria in Uganda. You can ask me how is malaria, what brings malaria? We don't know. But they say it is through mosquito bites. They also say sometimes it's through the air, sometimes, and they also say sometimes through water. Because you might be sleeping under a mosquito net every night, but you'll end up with malaria. There is no Ugandan who has never suffered from malaria.
Wow.
No Ugandan. And not once, not twice, more than 10 times. And when malaria attacks you, it comes strong. Okay? And the whole body is aching, every part of the body, and you are shivering, you are feeling shiverish, and everywhere is paining. There is a medication, but the medication is very expensive. You see, the medication from Europe wipes away malaria, but people cannot afford to buy it. The only remedy is the medication from India. So the India one, when you buy it, it makes the malaria parasite go to sleep. Then after a few months, it wakes up again. And you go back and take your money and buy some more. You see, so that is why people are dying with malaria day in, day out, because they cannot afford to buy the real powerful and stronger drug or stronger medicine that can hit malaria like that. Now, let me now come back to HIV/AIDS. Friends, as I shared, and I'll continue sharing, you might be knowing that Uganda is almost the size of Tasmania. Just a little bit bigger than Tasmania. Just a little bigger. But it has 48 million people. 48 million. That is not as of now, that is of 2-3 years ago. So by now, we should be more than that. So if you look at South Australia, the number of orphans we have in Uganda are more than the total population of South Australia. Those are orphans. Because we do have over 2 million orphans in Uganda. Over 2 million. So that is why my heart is to rescue some of those orphans and to give them hope and to give them a destiny and also to introduce them to God. That is one of the reasons why I really advocate for these orphans so that we can team up together to give a helping hand to these orphans. So, yeah, so any other question? Before I yes. Sorry.
So, with that many orphans, do some of them get caught up in the sex trade? And also, is there adoption to Western countries as well?
Okay, thank you very much for the question.
Big question, sorry.
Yeah, thanks for the questions. I will begin with the question number 2. Adoption is possible, yes, but it takes a process, as you know. It takes a process, and also it takes a little bit of some money, because you have to prove to the government that, number one, you are legal. Number 2, you are not going to mistreat the child. Number 3, you have a house or a home. Number 4, you have an income. You have an income to sustain or take care of that. So, Is that warning me? Okay. Anyway, so. Okay. So adoption is possible. And also, if you want to adopt, you are required to come and live in the country for a couple of months. Yes. You come and live yourself, stay in the country for maybe 5-6 months before, as you do your paperwork, as the government is investigating on you. You might be a wrong character and you want to do human trafficking. So now, back to your question number one. It was, reminding me of question number one?
The first one was, do some of those orphans get into sex trafficking?
Yes.
Are they sex trafficking?
Yes. Now, when HIV was so much prevalent in 80s and 90s and 2000, lots of people introduced orphanages. And actually, I want to tell you that orphanages were like instruments of spreading HIV/AIDS. And that's why the government had to come and say, hang on, we disorganize and we no longer allow orphanages. So I cannot say that there are no orphanages. There are orphanages, but the government is not supporting them because they were carriers. They were carriers of HIV/AIDS. So these orphans end up, because they are vulnerable, they are destitute, they have no parent, they are helpless. Anybody who comes, especially now the girl child, any man who comes, they just accept. Why? They need shelter. They need where to belong. You see, and that's why you find lots of early pregnancy happening. Early pregnancy, early childhood marriages, and abortion, and many things happening. Why? Because this girl is vulnerable, and she wanted shelter, or she had no shampoo, or she had no dress, and here is a man who is offering her a dress, so she gives in herself, and she ends up with HIV/AIDS. You see, so that is how some of these have been carriers of HIV/AIDS, up to date. And not only HIV/AIDS, but also they have joined wrong groups like rebels, like gangs, like sniffing drugs, and many of them are also on the streets as a result of that. So that is why, again, I say, that is why we have a heart of rescuing and bringing hope to these destitute children. At least, even if 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, so that before God we shall say, yes, we tried. We tried what we could, and that is what we did. So that is about HIV/AIDS. Now, before we pause for a break, let me tell you about the rebel activity. This rebel activity is because whenever I share about rebels, because I went through that, all this I'm telling you is I have been through. Mm-hmm. Thank God that not with AIDS, but my biological brother, the elder brother of mine, died with HIV/AIDS. We were only two brothers. You see, and my elder brother died. He was so, I should say, immoral that he ended up with HIV/AIDS, and he died, leaving 7 children. Yeah, that is HIV/AIDS. You see, so that is how God gave me now a vision and a burden. God spoke to me to become a father to the fatherless, and I began with the children of my own brother. And then it spread. Yes, there's a hand here.
Kerry, I just wanted to ask about sponsorship of children who are with or without family.
Yeah, I'm coming to that. That's where I'm coming. Thank you very much. So that is how I began caring or taking care of kids or orphans in my house. You see, I began with the children of my own brother. Later on, God spoke to me to open up to children who are not related to me. And as you know, as you have heard, just currently, at the moment, we have 32 in our house. But more than 70 children have come through our house, through our home. You see, our home. At the moment, because of that, we also run an orphan program, that is orphan sponsorship program. And I thank God that there are some people here from this church who have been sponsoring some children through us or through an organization in Australia here called World Share to us. Thank God for that. For you, I will say more about that later. But we are taking care. We have like 450 orphans we have blessed in homes, in families. Not an orphanage, but in families. Why? Because it's better for a child to grow up in a community. Together with the other children, they learn together, they grow up together. And so what we do is now to find a sponsor, to find the sponsors for him or her, to sponsor their education, their medical, and their beddings. The three, you see. But food and shelter, we encourage the family taking care of that child at least to struggle and provide food. You see, because you cannot feed the entire family. You see, so that is how the 400 are placed in families. But my heart is to see at least 2,000 children, 2,000 orphans, at least being rescued and given hope out of no hope. So many years ago, when I was in my Bible college in New Zealand, I ran across an organization based in Australia here, which is called World Share. So World Share is an organization that partners with us when it comes to child sponsorship. You see, so you send your money to them, and then they send that money to our church organization, and then we do the logistics of finding this child, and now there is correspondence. You correspond with the child, write letters to each other, you get to know, you can also visit your child. You become a parent from afar, but you become a parent. What is the reason? Is to restore hope and raise a new generation of children who know that even if my father, my mother passed on, but there is a God of love who has connected me to another person who has given me love and who has given me hope. That is the purpose of all the sponsorship and taking care. The children who are in my home, for your information, there is no paperwork. There is no paperwork that I did or that I signed with the government. No, if you bring children on in your house, no paperwork, actually you are relieving the government. You are relieving them and you're giving them a good service. Though they don't pay you. The government does not fund, it does not help at all. They just appreciate you and say thank you very much. You see, so that is about child sponsorship. Now, rebel activity. Time for break?
No, you go.
Okay, rebels. Friends, if it is spending nights, this is to be honest with you, God being my witness, if it is spending nights in the bush because of rebels, I did. Okay? Because you would only be allowed in your house or around your compound during day. During night, when it clocks 4 p.m., you find a bush. You don't have bushes here. Australia, you don't have bushes. We have bush and bushes in Uganda. So you find a bush to enter and you hide yourself and you spend the nights in the bush. Because of rebels. They could come and attack you in your house, kill you there. So all that I have been through. But this particular story, always, whenever I share it, sometimes I get emotional. I told you about the Lord's Resistance Army, the rebel group led by Joseph Kony. So they are so much prevalent in the northern part of Uganda. So much during those days. They are no more. The government pushed them out. They are now hiding in the Central Republic in the forests. But when I heard about the rebels had killed, abducted school children, and they had done lots of things, I traveled from my city, left my family. I went, it's like, how many? It's like 400 kilometers from where I live. So I went to the camps, the IDPs, internally displaced camps, where the children were, just to encourage them, to pray with them. I did not have anything to give them, but I just felt for them, to spend a week just visiting them, encouraging them, and loving on them, and praying, Lord, how can I help these kids? Now, when I finished my mission, I jumped on a bus heading back home because I did not have a car. So, but in between my journey back home, listen, we ran into the rebel group. So the rebels were laying down besides the road to kill everybody who was in the bus. So they began shooting, firing guns, bullets to the bus. People are screaming. They shot the engine. The engine is smoking. The bus is going nowhere. Everybody on the bus is screaming for life. People are dying, are dropping dead. And I knew that was the end of my life. The guy who was seated next to me was shot, and his blood spilled on me. And I knew that the next bullet will be on me. I bowed down, and I prayed 3 words, God help me. I began thinking about my young family back home. How will they be? I knew that I was going to be killed or shot dead, or the entire bus is going to be set ablaze or bombed. But God is God. And God is so caring. And I always say, if your day has not yet come, you'll never die. Yeah. God spoke to me and gave me an idea. He said, John, crawl on the dead bodies in the aisle. Just crawl over them. Don't lift your head, just crawl. Open the door of the bus and jump out. And that's what I did. I crawled, opened the door of the bus and jumped out, and I began running into the bush. And it was like the rebels were after me. They all turned their guns to shoot at me. So they fired their bullets at me, but God protected me that no gun touched my body. The bullets were flying over me as I kept running. So God protected me because He knows my heart for the orphans. He knows how I love children. He knows how I love to bring hope to these hopeless children. He knows that I can do everything it means, at least to give a child hope. So God could not allow me be killed by the rebels. So whenever I talk about that, I become emotional because God knows my heart. And it's the reason why we have these children in our home. By faith, taking care of them, feeding them, educating them, treating, giving them, offering them medication so that they can have a life. And through our family, through my house, we have some of them have become doctors, some of them are nurses, some of them they have done several courses. And they're now settled, some of them are working, and some of them are married, they're happy. And when they're happy, we are the happiest. So I'll pause here.
John, just before you do, okay. How far did you run through the bush? For how long?
Yeah, honestly speaking, number one, where I did not know that community. It was a new community for me. So where I was running, I didn't know. Whether I'm going to run into the rebels, I didn't know, but I just kept running. I ran like 10 kilometers deep in the bush, and I lost shoes. I lost shoes in the bush. I did not know how I lost the shoes. But later on, after like 10 kilometers, my feet became sore. And that I could not be able to walk. That is when I began asking myself, what has happened to my feet? Just to realize I lost the shoes. See, and the thorns had pricked me like nothing, and the feet were sore. But I still had to keep running. So that is how the Lord rescued me. And later on, I made my way far away to the main road, and I met with the government troops heading to the scene where the rebels were. So I've been through a lot of this in my life just because of rescuing and giving hope to the hopeless.
Thank you, Musumba. Can we have a 5-minute quick toilet break if you need it? Or get a glass of water, or just chat amongst yourself, and we'll come back in just a couple of minutes for our last session. All right, I'm going to jump straight back to Pastor John now, and we're going to continue where he left off. All right, good. Exciting finish to our evening.
Thank you very much, Rafiki. Do you know what Rafiki means? Friend. Yeah, friend. Yeah, friend. You know, you remember Asante sana, squashy banana, Asante sana, squash. You remember that? So Asante sana means thank you very much. Yeah. So whenever you hear me say Asante sana, thank you very much. Well, welcome back for our second session. I will talk a little bit about the spiritual atmosphere, the evil. I will talk about both evil spiritual atmosphere in Uganda and also the real spiritual atmosphere in Uganda. Uganda has had a lot of mixture of things happening, both good and bad. Bad is people who call themselves spiritual, yet they're not spiritual. They're evil, and they're kind of witches or witch doctors, and they like to sacrifice children, not only children, I mean heads. They are after heads of children, and also they were also after heads of mature people. And that is if you do not have a scar on your body. A scar like this one? A scar. Scar, yes. So before they chop off your head, they undress you and check your body if you don't have any scar. And if you have a scar, they don't kill you. If you don't have, they kill you. Why? Because the witch doctors ask for the heads, only the head of a certain child, to give you riches. So you take the head to the witch doctor, and the witch doctor will say, okay, now you have pleased the gods, now the gods will give you wealth. And it has worked to some people. Yep, it has worked to some people. Some people have gotten wealth through that. You see? And so that's why I said it is an evil spiritual atmosphere in Uganda. But the government, I thank God for our government, because the government really came strong on it and against those so-called priests. Some of them are calling themselves pastors. Some of them are calling themselves priests or bishops. But the government had to stand against them, and they began investigating every religion. Every religion. Yeah, every religion and every pastor. Yes, and also that has calmed down. At the moment, there is a revival. Now, that is now the positive part of it. At the moment, there is a revival. There is a new wave in this country, Uganda. New wave. You see, especially after COVID. Oh my goodness. After COVID, Everybody in Uganda is on fire. Yes, I'm talking about the evangelicals. I'm talking about the Pentecostals and the evangelicals. They are on fire for Christ. To win so many people to Christ. We are doing so many outreaches, doing so many open air gospel outreaches, doing so many revival camps, so many of that. So it has really changed and alternated the atmosphere, the evil atmosphere in Uganda. You see, now, let me give you an example. My own biological mother was a witch. My mother. She was a witch. She was a sorcerer. She was a spiritist. Some of you have heard this story, but some of you haven't. Please listen to this. My own mother was a witch. She was an agent of the devil, or Satan. And she could wake up every morning at 3 a.m. to communicate to the evil spirits. And I thank God that that is the time I got born again. That's the time I came to Christ. And I thank God for the pastor of the church that discipled me. The first thing that I was discipled into was the power of prayer. The power of prayer. So I learned how to fight through prayer. And whenever my mother could wake up to communicate to her evil spirits, I also wake up in another room to pray. I am praying loud, not slow, but loud. My mother is loud, the son is also loud. But at the end of it all, God won. God won the game, and my mother lost the power. She became powerless. The demons ran away from her. And one morning when she woke up to call upon them, no response. No response. So she said, my son, I have realized your God is stronger than my gods. And that's how she gave her life to Christ. She gave her life to Christ. We prayed for her, led her to Christ. She died in 2012, 88 years old, very strong. And she was my intercessor, number one. Intercessor, waking up at 3 a.m. praying for her son. Lord, use my son. Lord, anoint my son. Lord, Lord, Lord. So she was my intercessor, number one. You see? So then the entire family, our entire family, all of them became Christians. They became born again up to now. Even my brother, before he died a believer. Yeah, he died a believer, you see, and my elder sister is also a believer. So that is how the whole family became a Christian, and we planted a church next to our home. So we have our church, a Pentecostal church next to our home. So that is the evil atmosphere that has been happening on this country, Uganda. Yeah, so before I come to conclusion, let me share a little bit about, was something lifting up, somebody was lifting up his hand to ask a question? Okay. Before I come to conclusion, and then I will allow so many questions, I will talk a little bit about partnership. As I told you, in my house we have 32 children. And we can still have more children. We can still bring in more children. But we also run an orphanage, a sponsorship program. And I'm here to introduce a ministry or an organization that I myself founded, which is called Christian Fellowship Ministries. CFM. Christian Fellowship Ministries. And the Christian Fellowship Ministries is in partnership with World Share. At the end of it all, to some of you who will be lucky, I'll be giving you a little bit of together in Uganda. And this, you can also go to the website of World Share and you'll find Christian Fellowship Ministries. You see, and you can learn about Christian Fellowship Ministries in the World Share website. And there is a card here. If you want some more information about World Share, about Christian Fellowship Ministries, please, at the end of my speech, you'll pick one of these, or you can just go to the website and that look. So we run the sponsorship program, Sponsor a Child. We call it SAC, Sponsor a Child. And I don't know how much World Share charges, but on a monthly basis, you remit to World Share, and on a quarterly basis, World Share sends these funds to us, CFM, or Christian Fellowship Ministries. And then we dispatch this money to these children. And the money pays for their education system, because even if the government says that education is for free, it isn't for free. No. They say UPE, Universal Primary Education, it isn't for free. You have to pay. You pay what they call the building fund or any other thing. You see, so the sponsorship goes direct to the child, okay, to pay for his school fees, pay for his books, all his school supply, medical attention when the child falls sick, and then the funds are there to attend to the sick, and also, and we buy beddings and mosquito nets and blankets and lantern lamps to help the entire family. So that is about the sponsorship program, if anybody is interested. But more information, you can pick a website, a World Share website, and just click CFM or Christian Fellowship Ministries. Now, you wanted to know something.
I wanted to know about justice. So, our Commonwealth provided laws here in America, Australia, England, based around biblical laws, life and death values. And I wanted to know if your rebels oppose your value system that was instilled by Commonwealth culture, or if it was something else.
A rebel is a rebel. They don't want to know because they have their own personal interests. Some of them are not after, again, at the government, but just causing pain. That they're all causing loss. See, they don't care. So whether there are some laws, they don't want to know. They have their own personal interests. They want to know. They want to be seen. So a rebel is a rebel. They don't care about the laws. They don't care about who is in power. They don't care what they will gain or they won't gain. They just want to cause pain to the government. Now, take, for example, the most recent, in DRC Congo is to our west. There has been a rebel group hiding in the, DRC Congo is very big, very large. So in one of the forests, they had the rebel group hiding there against Uganda. And recently, I think it was in the month of June, they attacked a school. Some of you might have heard about it. Yeah, they attacked a school at night. Yes, oh yes, that's the western part of Uganda, western to the border. They attacked a school in Uganda, they abducted, carried away many children, and they killed so many children. Up to now, there are some children who are still missing. They're nowhere to be seen. And but the government of Uganda is now working hand in hand with the government of DRC Congo to track these rebels. And they have actually killed and gotten arrested many of them who are hiding over there. What is the purpose? The purpose is to cause pain. So now the innocent parents who sent their children to school are now suffering loss. Why? Their children are missing. And what is the aim? No aim, but to cause pain. So even if there are laws by Commonwealth or whatever, a rebel is a rebel. The way you people understand in the first world country is not the way people understand in the third world countries. Their understanding is so different. They are all after, some of them are after making a name, some of them are after what? They have their own interests. So that is why we thank God that once again, continue praying for our president. He's a good president. His wife is a Christian, strong Christian. His two daughters are pastors. Yeah, the daughters of a president are pastors, and they're pastoring large churches in the main city. So they keep praying, and they keep also counseling their own dad. They say, Dad, please don't touch us. Dad, please don't touch Christians. So they keep on. And that's why you see that there is peace in Uganda because of the first lady and because of the daughters. And also he has pastors who are his advisors. Oh yeah, pastors. And they are pastors who are on a payroll by the government. Every morning they go to State House to pray for the government. Pray for the government. Pray for the government. Every day. And they're paid by the government for that. So that's why Uganda is what it is right now. But keep praying for our president. Keep praying for us. But we should achieve more. And again, I want to extend an open invitation to all of you. And even to those who are watching me, who are following us, Lighthouse Family Church. If you want to take a trip to come and see for yourself, Pastor Paul has been there 4 times. I know he'll come the 5th, the 7th, the 8th, up to 10 times. That's Pastor Paul. Pastor Tim will also come over soon. Tony has been there several times. David has been there. And lots of other people I can't remember here. So the door is open. Walk up with Pastor Paul, Pastor Tim, and come and see for yourself and witness with your own eyes. Then you will comprehend what I'm sharing with you.
Good.
Thank you so very much. And if you have any other question,
yep.
I am here today. I'm here on Sunday, yep. And we shall.
It's good. We'll come to you in just a second, Kerry. You know, as you were sharing, couldn't help but think. I mean, we witnessed tonight hearing about a country, a culture that is foreign to us, right? Other than what we would either know personally through him or on the media. But, you know, we could be enlightened or made aware of what the things that Pastor John has shared with us. But, you know, our own country, you know, our own culture, there is an assault on our society. There's an assault on our children. So, you know, tonight was more about, I suppose, a general awareness that the enemy that is at large, and I'm not trying to give the enemy more credit, but it's just actually understanding that the attacks on our culture are very similar. It just looks a bit different. I mean, you know, children are being slayed at the rate of millions in our country and in the first world country through what we call abortion or other means. Okay, so, you know, again, it is about being a prayerful nation, a prayerful people, and actually understanding, as a pastor has testified tonight, that people that pray to the God of the universe will overcome the gods of evil. And so, thank you, John, for sharing and making us a little bit more aware of what it's like to live in Uganda. You didn't touch on your wife at all, and it doesn't matter, but Jessica is a beautiful wife, and 4 biological children. Do you want to touch on that a little bit? Yeah, go for it.
Do you give me a minute, please?
Yeah.
Why could I forget my wife?
That's
how? Yeah, that's right. Now, I am married to one wife, and she's a woman. Okay. And so together we have 4 biological children, 1 daughter, okay, number 2 is our daughter, and so very beautiful, and then we have 28 other children living with us. And we have been married with Jessica for the last 35 years only, 35 years, and we are happily married, and we show a Christian example to everybody, or to the marrieds. So that is about my family, and I will show you some photos of my family on Sunday, okay, of my family and where we live, and a little bit of whatever on Sunday. But for me to, there is a story behind how I married her, because to some of you who might not be knowing, like my friend here, who is about to get married, and but you in Uganda you have to pay dowry. Yeah, you have to pay dowry, bride price, and you pay it in the form of cows. Yeah. So, Pastor Tim, some cows, okay? Many cows. Yeah, so you either pay from five cows, 6 up to 10. And each cow costs like $400. Each cow. So if you don't have an income, then it's hard to be given authority to marry somebody's daughter. Because you have to please the parents by taking the cows before they write you a consent letter that now you are free to take our daughter. So think about that. And that is the reason why many men, many people just cohabit. They're living together illegally because they are not able to pay the dowry. So I was so blessed that my father had 4 cows, so he paid the 4 cows, and they're still demanding me 1 cow. I haven't paid 1 cow up to tomorrow. Okay, so I haven't paid it. But anyway, you have to pay. And then later on, we had a very simple wedding, and that's how we have lived together for the last 35 years. So that is about Jessica, and she's right now taking care of the family, taking care of the ministry, the church back home. Please pray for her. I was speaking to her this afternoon, and she looked tired because of things, but she's good. Keep praying for Jessica, my wife.
John, the question that you've been asked since you've been here is, if you've got 32 children living in your home,
yes,
how can you manage that with just a wife and a husband and no servants?
Well, if you want to hire, if you are able to hire a servant, whom we call a maid, you can. And if you're able to be paying her or him on a monthly basis, you can do that. So what we do is
How much you have to pay? How much a month you have to pay for a servant or a maid or whatever?
Take, for example, give it like $75 to $100. Yeah. Yeah.
The average wage in Uganda is about $2 a day, Australian. $2.
Yeah. $2. And that is why people in Uganda, Mr. Hagen, 90% don't eat bread. 90%. They cannot afford a loaf of bread. Why? Because a loaf of bread is a day's wage. So how can you work the whole day just for a loaf of bread? And yet a loaf of bread is not considered as food. It cannot feed the entire family. You see? So what we do is the older children help the younger. See, and also train the younger. Even washing clothes, everything's done manually, and cleaning the house, doing the dishes. So the older children help the younger. That's how we manage at our house.
Very good.
Yep.
All right. Just one of the ways that Lighthouse Family Church has been helping John and a lot of the families within the children that he's placing in families are church families around his network. So you have around 100 churches. Is that right, John?
In Uganda,
you look after around 100 churches.
In Uganda, yes.
In Uganda,
yeah.
And so those children that they are sponsoring are within his network. We as a church, sometimes if you don't want to sponsor a child, we through our CRC missions send large sums or a reasonable sum of money over through our mission arm, and we buy a truckload of food. So that is in the form of, particularly around COVID time and stuff like that, didn't we? I think you purchased a truckload of rice, maize, what were there, beans, all sorts, and in turn they send back a heap of photos of all the grateful families and that showing off their bags of food.
Yeah, exactly. That is it. And that is it. And you can just liaise with the pastors and whatever, and everything can happen. So I only have 4 brochures here to those who may need to know more about us and how they can be involved in this work. So at the end of it all, you can pick one if you want. Thank you. And wow, are you kind of like...
That's all good. That's okay. Would you like to hear, we were going to wrap up by 8:30, okay? So we were giving it an hour and a half. Would you like to hear John speak for another 10 minutes? Yes. And share a couple other stories? Just your faith journey, particularly for Karen who's just come in. But if you need to go, you feel free. You can go. The urn is hot out there. If anyone wants a cup of tea or coffee, and you probably have to make it yourself, but everything's there. And if you wanted to hang around for a few minutes to chat with John, then we're going to be out of here by 9 o'clock. But so I'm just giving you a bit of time framework that we're not pushing people out. But okay. So Kerry, you got a question?
Just wondered if you wouldn't mind finishing that story about what happened to you with the bus. So you're on the ground after in the bush and you've got sore feet.
Oh, okay. But before I come to that, today with the Pastor Paul, I was just to visit Boston Beans. Boston Beans. Oh my goodness. Oh, Boston Beans, my. It blew my mind away. When I got back home, I called my son, who is the lawyer, and told him, do you know what? I have been somewhere. Boston Beans have spoiled me. Wow. So they made us test several coffees, and wow, it was amazing. And yeah, I wish I can ship all the coffee in Uganda to Boston. Okay, yeah. We will look into that. I already shared with my son, and my son said, yes, we are gonna do it. So thanks for having us, and may the Lord bless both of you and reach your husband, Richard. So anyway, let me complete the story of the bus. So as I was saying that, as I jumped in the bush and ran in the bush, and I lost my shoes. But later on, I said I began connecting 10 kilometers in the bush. I just assumed that I think the main road is the direction. So I began connecting while leaping, because the feet are still sore, to the main road. And I met with a good Samaritan who had a bicycle. And when he saw the blood on me, he knew that I was a survivor of the bullets that they had. So he offered me a lift on his bicycle, and he rode me 10 kilometers on the main road, and then I went and reported myself to the police. You see, I reported the police what had happened to me. I'm bare feet, and this is blood on me, and I didn't have any money on me, honestly. I had paid all the money I had, or I had paid it by bus fare back home. So I didn't have any money. So I had to call home. I called somebody home who sent me some money again to pay another bus fare back home. You see, up to now, there is a day. I wonder whether it was in here in Australia, whether it was in Melbourne. Somebody told me, John, have you ever watched a movie? I told him no. So he took me to a movie theater. Now, do you guess what movie? It was The Blood Diamond. So The Blood Diamond brought all the memories house. Oh, my! I told him, excuse me, I must walk out of this. Yeah, because I exactly how everything was happening. I said, no way. It was too much. Too much. So if you want to take me for a movie, please don't take me to watch Blood Diamond, okay? Not me. Yeah.
How far do people who are wanting to worship Jesus and come to your church, how far do they have to travel on a Sunday, or when you hold meetings, are they living far out, or what's the journey like?
That's a very wonderful question. And take, for example, let me just also open our understanding. Some of you have not been to a third world country. I'm talking about a home without electricity. I'm talking about a home without running water or tap water. I'm talking about a home without flushing toilets. Okay? I'm talking about homes without television. I'm talking about homes, in most of them, especially in the country, they live in under grass thatch houses. Which grass thatch houses are infiltrated by rats. And the rats come out at night to look for food. And they carry fleas. And that's why you find most children from the countryside, they're suffering from skin diseases, skin rashes, because caused by fleas. So I'm just giving you an understanding a little bit, especially in the country. But now, because grass is becoming scarce due to increased population, grass is becoming scarce. So now people are buying cheap tin iron. Very cheap. They're just like paper. Tin. Very cheap. And during the day, very hot. Because there is no insulation. You call it insulation? Yeah, there's no insulation. During the day, you have to sit out, not in the house. Very hot during the day. Because that is what they can afford. Okay. So now, walking to church or coming to church, people come from far. They come from... My own story, I used to walk 26 kilometers to church. One way, 26 kilometers. Bare feet, no shoes, no sandals. 26 kilometers. One way. So up to, because now, I should say maybe 10% have cars. Maybe 10% have cars, maybe. But the majority of them have to walk. And if it is a rainy Sunday, no church. Because only a few, maybe those who have maybe only 10 can be available on a rainy Sunday. Because how can somebody soak himself in rain to walk to church? So that is what happens when the weather changes. Nobody comes to church until another time. So that is how, but people walk still. And if you can afford a motorcycle, a push bike, we have push bike taxis, which act like taxis. You see, we call them border borders. If you can afford to pay, jump on one and ride to the church, but still not on a rainy day. Because they don't have, kind of that. So that is how life is. Churches work best during dry seasons, when there is no rain. Rain seasons, Sundays, the number draw goes down. Yes, Pastor.
Can you let us know what sort of miracles you see on a regular basis?
Because everybody in Uganda, especially believers, especially Christians, the only source is God. You know, they live on hand to mouth, as I mentioned on Sunday, subsistence living, and they keep trusting God day in, day out. And that's why they're so prayerful. Why? The only help, somebody who can help them out, is God. So by so, it builds their faith. You see, and when now they mix that faith with the Word of God, then a miracle happens.
So if they get sick?
So when they get sick, either they pray for themselves, they lay hands on themselves, because they mix faith with the Word of God, or we pray for them. And I've seen people with HIV/AIDS being healed. Yeah, people demonized, who have demons, evil spirits on them. As you begin praying, there's manifestation. And demons scream, people fall down the ground, and then they're delivered. So miracles are still evident in Uganda, I should say, because of faith in God and putting the Word of God, mixing it with faith. That's what happens.
For those of us who've been fortunate enough to go to Uganda, we've come back frustrated because we've witnessed it, and we're burning with that same fire of sharing what we've seen, and we just then lose the fire. We come home because it sort of falls flat. Does that make sense, David?
Mm-hmm.
You, Tony? Jenny? You know, those, and that's not to make us feel bad.
No.
It's just to say, wow, God is real. What faith can we stir?
That's right.
What faith can we stir in us? Sorry, Paul. Yeah.
Thank you, Pastor John. Just a very quick one. How literate is your community and your population you have, and how many have access to Bibles? Is it a hard thing to get Bibles to them? Like, how many in your church community would have Bibles?
That is a very spiritual, sensitive question. To be honest with you, people back home in Uganda cannot afford a Bible. A Bible is, let's say, $10, 10 US dollars. What Bible? $10. A day's wage in US is 2 Australian dollars. So somebody cannot only work to buy a Bible. You see, they can read. It's not all of them, but most of them can read, but they can't afford it. Not because the Bibles are not available. They are available in Kampala, the Bible Society. We have a Bible Society in Kampala, which prints Bibles in England and ships to get sold in Uganda. So they are readily available, but only is that affordability that people are not able, they can't afford. Yeah, there are Gideon's Bible. There are Gideons, but Gideons are only in English. Yeah, only in English. So, and yet the rest of the people cannot readily read English since they never went to school.
Yep, Jenny.
Thank you. How many Christians are in Uganda, and as opposed to other religions?
That question is hard. I'm going to explain it. Never believe in what is on the media. The media says either 70 or what percent of Uganda is Christian. No. They generalize everything, including the nominal Christians who have no relationship with Christ. But the real Christians who have a relationship with Christ are 25%. The rest are religious, or they are Muslims, or they don't have other religions, or they don't have other gods. So that is.
So it was just a follow-up question for the Bibles. How many Bibles would your church congregation need? Like, is that something that we could help as a church to pay for Bibles that you could distribute? How many would be helpful for you?
That is for all of our church. I just guess like maybe 100. If God can provide 100 for now, that would be excellent. Local language and also in English.
Yep.
Yeah.
In 2017, 2017, when did we go? 2016. This particular team at our pastor leaders conference, we were able to pull together, just from our team, to answer you there were 140 delegates, and about 60, at least half of them, did not have a Bible.
Yeah.
We had arranged through the local Bible Society, we funded 60 Bibles from our pocket. So you can make a big difference. So because a lot of them were preaching off of one page of a Bible. That might have been the only gospel they had was a page ripped out of a Bible. It sounds foreign, doesn't it?
Yeah. Did you have a question? Okay. There is something I haven't answered. Was it your question?
Oh, I was only clarifying the language. That was okay. You answered it.
Okay.
Just about the language. Do you have probably many different languages, wouldn't you? And like we have one language, African language, or Uganda. There's other countries.
In Uganda, we have 54 different languages. I can only speak 10 of them. Okay? So that's why when you visit, or when even myself, wherever you go, I must have an interpreter to interpret me to that particular language in that community. But Bibles are available in most of those languages. Yeah. Not in all of them, but in most of them, you have a Bible translated.
I think we purchased in 3 or 4 languages.
Yeah.
Because it was tricky in that conference. Pastor John had invited pastors and leaders from Kenya,
yes,
Tanzania,
yes,
South Sudan, Uganda, and in some of our sessions we had 3 or 4 interpreters. So you know how long it took to get through a session?
Yeah. So that is how tricky it gets. But yeah. Any other question?
Well, we might wrap it up there. And if you want to hang around and ask John some questions one-on-one, that you feel free to do so.
Before we pray, I want you please to thank Pastor Paul. He's feeding me a lot of ice cream. And
not only ice cream, come on.
But anyway, he's
getting coffee as well, right?
Yeah. But what I'm trying to say is that he's a wonderful host, and I had also a wonderful time with Daudi and the family. So thank you very much. Thanks for coming. God bless you, and keep praying for us. See you when I see you.
Do you want to? How about you pray over us,
and then you also
and
pray
then we'll
over
pray
me.
over you. Shall we do that? Yeah.
Yes.
Good. All right.
Very good. Now, when I say in Jesus' name, how will you understand to say amen? Really? Should I pray in Swahili?
Go for it.
In a different language?
Why not?
Are you okay with that, or I pray in English?
No, you have to open up your spirit now to receive, don't you?
So what do you say, Pastor?
Okay. How about you pray in Swahili over us and then interpret it into English?
Okay. Baba, katika jina la Yesu, ninakushukuru kwa jioni ya leo. Ninakushukuru kwa kanisa hili, ninakushukuru kwa mchungaji Paul na mchungaji Tim, ninakushukuru kwa wote ambao umeleta hapa siku ya leo. Baba, nakushukuru kwa ajili ya kunipa uhai na kwa ajili ya kuniwezesha ili nisimame mbele ya watu hawa wote, nikiri jina lako, tena nitaje kuhusu shida, majukumu ambayo tunayopitia kule Uganda na kule Afrika. Naomba Roho yako Mtakatifu ipate kuwaguza, ipate kunena nao. Naomba wewe Mungu mwenyewe upate kunena na mioyo zao. Na wale ambao wako hapa, wale ambao hawako hapa, Baba, nena na mioyo zao. Ninakushukuru kwa nafasi kama hii, Naomba katika jina la Yesu Kristo Mwokozi wetu. Amina. Father, I want to thank you because of your loving care. I want to thank you for this opportunity. I want to thank you for Pastor Paul and for Pastor Tim. I want to thank you for everybody who was able to sacrifice his or her time just to come and sit and listen and get an awareness of what is happening in Uganda and also in Africa. I ask you that, Lord, Holy Spirit, may you speak to our hearts. May you now, oh Lord, speed up whatever you want us to do. And may you enable us to do and to act according to your word before you return. Therefore, Father, I pray that as they'll be returning back to their homes, I pray that grant them journey mercies, and until we meet again, in Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Amen. We say Amina. Good. I mean, we've prayed.